Well, Carson, for you to be here, on the stage here today is a big deal. I appreciate you doing that. I first got to interact with you, the Cash Flow Summit back last fall here in Kansas City, and so interesting. Neither one of us. I mean, not that we're not in real estate, we are, but our main thing is support to the real estate investors that were there. And so, I just appreciate your idea of community and how you were talking, at least from stage. And I'm going to ask you a couple questions about it here, but just all the things that you've built, but in reference to just helping other people. That's the thing I walked away from, is that you really find fulfillment in creating spaces, as well as, strategies and all the fun stuff that comes, with the tactics of business and insurance and stuff. But I just got the feeling that you just really like to help people. Where does that come from? Is that true? What wires you that way?
Yeah, I don't know because most folks that know me would say I'm a dick, but no, yeah, I apologize for the crassness, but no, I at the end of the day when you lay down at night and you're wearing nothing but your freaking New Balances for some reason, you're staring at the
Right.
ceiling and you have to account for your day. There's been a lot of times in my life where the account for my day had a very negative notion to it. And that sucks. That really, really sucks to think that, if I am the sum of how all my days ended,
Right.
the trajectory of my life is
Yeah.
not headed, I had all these big dreams, but it's not headed that direction. And the one thing that I found that consistently moves that needle forward every day, and sometimes it's incrementally, sometimes it's in leaps and bounds, but it's always in helping someone else, bringing value to someone else. We
Yeah.
in our community we call it value without expectations, and then we layer that with the concept of reciprocity and abundance. How the hell can I say I'm abundant if I'm so afraid to give away value without expectations that I've
Yeah.
always got to put a catch or a hook on it?
Yeah.
Uh, and it's been good to us. So
It's interesting. I want to ask you some questions about your community and what you're building there, but your mindset there, it's almost like, you were the one that needed the mindset shift. And so, okay, great. What's the things that I need? And I'm doing it for myself. And then, oh, by the way, I get to then, implant this same kind of wisdom into other people that are in your community. Is that kind of how it stems for you? Is like coach Carson first, and then the
um,
others kind of get the benefit of as you get to grow and change?
yes and no. So it's always in a lot of regards, it's like, okay, I am maybe I'm not 100 steps ahead, but I'm one step ahead. And because I'm one
Yeah.
step ahead, I don't need to be 100 steps ahead. That's one thing that's crazy to me. People are like, why, if I'm gonna get a coach, I've got to have somebody who's 100 steps ahead, who's worth $1 billion. And it's like, good luck affording their time where you're at right now.
Right.
You could get a coach one step ahead, 10 steps ahead, and the value they're going to bring is viable and it's what's most needed now. And as you progress and take those steps, if that individual or that group, that community is stepping forward as well, then you all get to continue to step forward and do life together in an ongoing fashion. If not, if they stay in a standstill, you take those steps and they help you take them, and then you find the next person beyond that, 10 steps beyond that.
Yeah.
Either way, the most appropriate thing for you to do is that first step or two or three. And so, yeah,
Right.
for me, I do try and stay one or 10 or maybe even 100 steps ahead of folks.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I end up learning and growing. What's been incredible, dude. Absolutely incredible. I thought I was good at sales because I am really good at selling insurance and financial services and all these things, right? But learning to sell individuals on investing in themselves, that is the most difficult sell I've ever had to make. It's crazy. People will
Mm.
invest money into markets, they'll invest into everything else, but investing in themselves and the
Yeah.
biggest consistent thing that we come up against, roadblock barrier, is people are like, well, I don't want to pay for it and then not do it. And my question is, why the hell wouldn't you do it? If
Yeah.
you paid for it, why wouldn't you do it? But they don't. And they're so timid in that
Yeah.
regard. And it's like, y'all, you are the one thing you have absolute control over. You can't control the S&P 500 or
Yeah.
some life insurance policy. Like you have no control. You have control over you, but it's the last thing you want to put money into. What
Right.
a stupid notion. But fighting that fight of learning to communicate with people in a different way and about different things,
Yeah.
I feel like I've had more growth and come further. I've had to sit and do more deep thinking and trial and error than I ever had to in anything else I've done. It's been the most rewarding, but also the most challenging. And so, to your question, yes, I feel like I'm always out looking for more externally and
Sure.
bringing everyone along with me as I do that. But also the internal retrospection, I feel like just continues to drive me forward as well.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for it. Some days I'm annoyed by it, but all in all, I'm grateful for it. So
Yeah, I get that. I feel the same way. I had a guest on my show a few weeks ago, a good friend of mine and mentor, and he basically has given me a blueprint or a template to be able to train my subconscious mind. And I was doing that kind of before I met him, but this is just a whole new philosophy and just a whole lot more in depth and clear. And I've been able to replicate some of that with some of our members as well, and with his help, it's been super cool. But when he said he first started, he thought, I mean, everybody's a 12-minute a day technique. This will absolutely triple your income. I mean, it can make your whole life better. And his mentor said, yeah, this is wonderful, but most people won't do this. It's like, well, wait,
mhm.
no, it only takes 12 minutes. What do you mean they won't do it? It's like, yeah, I mean, most people see success or more success as a mere preference, not necessarily as like a demand or a have to. And that's the same thing that you were just describing with that person that kind of gets shaky. And it's like, why wouldn't you do this? And it's like, they know their fault, and they know what it takes to just commit and overcome and grow, but yet they still hesitate and they won't invest into a community or coaching or whatever bucket that you want to put, that self-development in. And it's because it's really just for the 2%, the folks that are just like, no, 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 this is absolutely what I'm going to have to do in order to go to the next level. Now you have a huge community, and you're, insurance and financial security or financial, products, and you've got thousands of members. And so I know that it's more than just maybe quote unquote the 2%, but you're helping people kind of all walks inside of that realm. And so talk just a little bit about that, from building a community to people that are just getting started in the industry to people probably have been in it for a while and sold millions of dollars worth, and how that ecosphere or ecosystem can all work together in a community of yours.
Yeah, so what we have, I call it agnostic or non-denominational. So we've got folks from, Edward Jones and Charles Schwab and Merrill Lynch, and we've got folks from State Farm and farmers and every walk of life, brand new in business, making millions. And,
Yeah.
and we have all sorts of different levels to try and provide appropriate value to those people when and where they most need it, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thing that we've done that's the absolute best is we've created this culture, this internal culture. And they say that a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And it does, except for the ships that have holes in them. And so, through all of our coaching and training and this and that and the other, what we're attempting to do is plug the holes. Let's plug the holes in everybody's boat. But
Yeah.
the community itself and the culture, that is the rising tide. And so we do have literally every single week, multiple times. We'll put on a live training, a Zoom call. Sometimes we'll have 20 people there. Sometimes we'll have 200 people there. And we'll have folks jump on that call to collaborate that are making 7+ figures a year. And they just carve that out and they are there, and they'll take tidbits away here and there, but they're also pouring into everybody else.
Yeah.
And then it gets poured back. And it's a very reciprocal, again, culture. And it helps. So those folks making 7 figures a year, they're learning lessons like I'm learning as they
Right.
interact with these folks. They're also building relationships with all these people who become vocationally disturbed from time to time and decide to realign so that they
Yep.
they have a better alignment of core values and core focus. And where do
Yep.
you think they go? They go into the person that was able to carve out an hour and come and be a part of giving that value. And then again, on the other side of that coin, we have those brand new people that don't know what to do. They don't even know. Like when we at our lower levels, some of the training we put on, it's literally like, hey, should you be a sole proprietor? Do you feel
Right.
like it might be a good idea to set up an LLC and file as an S corp?
Right.
Because half the time your CPA, they'll do it if you ask them to, but they're not out there like, hey, you should do this.
Right.
And dude, we have this one gal. She's been in the business for like 3 years. She's not making millions. She's making like 50 grand a year at this point and improving and improving. She finally went through that training and then hit me up and was like, "Oh my gosh." I went and talked to my tax guy because he'd already done mine. He just hadn't filed them yet. And I was like, "Hey, what would this have been had we done this?" He's like,
Right.
well, technically we could still open that LLC for last year and file.
Yeah.
So they went ahead and did that and backfiled the LLC. It saved her like an extra 7 grand in taxes.
Yeah.
She was going to have to
Crazy.
pay 7 grand, and instead she got, some child tax credit, and it's like when you're making 50,000 a year, seven
It's a big deal.
grand, yeah, dude, that's what, a 17, 18%,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
That's a huge increase to overall take home. So we'll teach them things like that, and then the basics of insurance and sales, and
Yeah.
but again, as folks kind of come up through the ranks and they're making more and more, we try and really meet the metric where they're at,
Yeah.
uh, and have them pour back down. And
Yeah, that pullback is a big deal. I know that not just from like a mastermind perspective, but when I was even like coaching sales when I worked for an organization, and I was the top sales guy, but when I coached others, that's when I was keeping myself the sharpest. And people would always ask, like, why are I know how much, like, if you got another sale, that I know how much you would make at your level, and you're spending an hour and a half with me. That's crazy. You could easily go get another sale. And it was like, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, but I'm the sharpest as I am because I spend 2, 3, 4 hours a week with folks like you, and it's the best type of learning is to pour into someone else. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think until you can teach it, you don't know it.
That's true.
Right. And as soon as you know it, you don't have to, there's knowing it well enough to talk to another professional about it, right? And then that same knowledge that allows you to teach another professional allows you to not overcomplicate the conversation with the prospect, with the client, because the client,
Yeah.
they don't, if you can explain how a watch is made, it's easier and easier to just explain what the watch is and how it works. And
Right.
when I'm making a sell, that's all. I don't need to explain how it's made. I just need to explain what a watch is and how it works, but I can do so much more succinctly and really again uncomplicate the conversation because I know how the watch is made and I
Right.
know how incredibly intelligent I am. I don't need to prove anything to this customer. I just need to solve the problem they have from a
Yeah.
perspective they already own.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And if you're like me, back last fall, I took probably a group of 10 or so of our members to on a trip to Nashville, and we stopped by a Breitling shop and talking about the watches. And I had planned this trip, and I specifically was going to buy a specific Breitling watch. And I'm not a big watch guy, but I've always wanted a Breitling, and I kind of made this big to do out of it. And so sometimes it's not even a matter of what like that this clock there, this watch doesn't tell me the time. I mean, it does, but I don't necessarily use it for that. It meant much more for me. It was much more about legacy. That's why I went with the Breitling brand, because of where it's come from and the history of such. And I plan to give it to my son, and all these other things. That was my problem. I have no idea how the watch was made, nor do I care. To your point, typically the bigger the opportunity, the less technical selling that you're going to do anyway. It's more, truly finding whatever that need is. In this case, for me, it was not a need. I didn't need the watch, but there were elements of what the experience was, or what the experience will be for the watch that I was after. And so I
That's
appreciate your
that becomes the whole sell, right? And
right,
the person selling the watch, they don't need to get into all the technical details with you. It literally just comes down to, well, you wanted a watch, and you wanted a watch that provided this legacy and this backstory and was a good investment probably as well. And if
right,
you could have all that today out of this watch, when would you want to go ahead and solve for all that? And that's
right.
the sell. Like it's
Yep.
done.
Yeah. I love that. When you're thinking about community, I mean, there's a lot of people that have put their trust in you of like, okay, I'm going to be part of this group of people. And like you said, the rising tide is that community aspect. And we think the same thing. I mean, I can put a group, or I can put a training on, but the people that are in the room make the training either that much better or that much worse, for that matter. And so, focusing on the who and who's in the room, and making it special. That's the culture piece that you were talking about. But what's the tactical piece inside of that? Like, what are you and your team thinking about as new members are joining, as you're like filtering through people and making sure that it's a good culture fit? How do you guys determine that for the community?
Yeah. So obviously we have, I'm a big fan of EOS, big
Oh
fan
yeah.
of EOS. And one of the biggest things that EOS gave me was the very intentional breakdown of core values and core focus.
Yeah.
And I think we even take it to another level that EOS doesn't even get that in depth. We talk about how to build the damn watch, right? So we won't just overlay. Well, my core value is honesty. what the hell do you mean honesty? Because if I say
Right.
I value honesty, right, you're probably thinking, okay, I better not lie to him. And then if I pull a Rafiki from The Lion King and I'm like, look harder, you're
Yeah.
going to be like, well, I shouldn't lie to myself either. And I'm going to be like, no shit. But what I really mean when I say I value honesty, it's one of my values, is that I value a trait in people that drives them. They are willing, able, and driven to make and keep commitments.
Mm,
I feel lied to the most through omission, not commission.
mm,
Honesty is something you have to go and commit. But how the hell can I hold, whether it's my employees or this community of hundreds and thousands of agents, to that standard of be willing, able, and driven to make and keep commitments unless I can clearly communicate that?
yeah.
Accountability can't exist. And so we have these, again, core values, several of them, but every single one of those core values is very well defined. Anyone who comes in knows exactly what they're getting into. They know exactly what's going to get them booted out, and they know exactly what we're up to. Do we want to put on some cool trainings about all the neatest new index universal life insurance or infinite bank? Yeah, sure. But what we're up to, our core focus is to develop the largest community of honest, ethical, productive, and authentic insurance agents in the world. If you can't meet that metric, don't be here.
Yeah.
And then we put teeth in it, right? There's always a carrot and a stick, and the carrot is being a part of that. The stick is if you can't meet those metrics, then we'll give you your money back and you're gone.
Yeah.
And you can watch all the fun that we have and all the money we make. And
Right.
so I think that's what's created, that cohesion, that fusion within our culture is we have people that are pre-vetted through our funnel, frankly. We don't Most people don't find us on a website and buy into what we do. We don't pick up the phone and cold call. We run a free group, a free Facebook group, and we have people pour into there and they'll spend months, sometimes even years there getting to know us, getting to know our values, seeing,
Right.
how we put on free trainings, how we handle, certain scenarios when people want to pop off and be idiots or not. That they
Right.
know exactly who we are and what we're doing because we live it very out loud before they even say, "Hey, I want to be a part of this." And I think that also helps to filter for, again, that cohesion. It's not a perfect filter, but it
Yeah.
works pretty stinking well. So
Yeah. I appreciate that. I mean, it's like you can just be genuine, right? You're expected to be clear, and then also asking them, to be that in response, I think is huge. It shouldn't be big, right? If we're talking about just humans and getting together and spending time together, you think some of these things would just be like, unspoken, but very much like you, that we speak these things clearly because it actually matters. And then I think when you think of a lot of people that have been part of communities or groups and they maybe haven't had that experience is because, people were just thrown into a room and all for the sake of just, making the sale. And so I appreciate about your approach there. It's similar to ours, but it's like, if you're genuinely after the culture or the actual community being built properly, then the inside experience is like, oh my goodness, this is like nothing I've ever experienced before. And you wouldn't have a large group like you do if that was the case. What do you think is the most rewarding thing for you? Like looking back at, all these lives that you've touched or insurance agents that you've, impacted or financial services folks or just the community itself. Like what's the one thing where you're just like, wow, I'm so proud of this?
yeah, it's seeing one. I mean, one of my best friends on the earth at this point. I met him through that. He came in because he needed help. He was really struggling with his
That's
life
cool.
insurance sales, and inside of 12 months, we turned him into $1 million roundtable producer.
I love that.
But he was willing to come in and do. We have this slogan we call it "Do the damn work." We even put on an annual event. We have some of the industry's giants come in their bow ties and all prude and primed and proper, and they come to an event called "Do the damn work." So, but it's moments like that. I've met some of my best friends. I have we've started businesses together
Yeah.
that have come up through the ranks of this. And I've also had times where, somebody in the group would reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, I just really need to talk to someone." And you ever get that feeling when you're like, I'm busy, but I need to take that call.
Yeah.
And so you pick up the phone, you call them, and they're sitting under a freeway overpass with,
Mm,
a little pew pew in their lap, thinking about taking a very permanent solution to a very temporary problem.
yeah.
And you're able to talk them through that. And because they get through that day, They find the courage to go try one more time.
Yep.
And because they tried one more time, reciprocity, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have that little win and they realize that holy shit, I don't need some big win. All I need to do is just keep stacking these little wins. And that's how a wall is built, right?
Yeah.
It's just stacking that little stuff and their courage and confidence to live another day, to work another day, to feed their family. It goes through the roof. It fixes marriages. It fixes, homes. We've seen people come back out of foreclosure, bankruptcy, divorce. I myself, a lot of what we teach, it's the same stuff I went to work on 11 years ago when I got in this business and I almost went bankrupt and was in foreclosure and almost got divorced because I was being an asshole because the money was bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's just been when you talk about the most fulfilling and enjoyable part, that's it. It's seeing the way it's not about selling that policy or
Yeah.
whatever. It's seeing the way that everybody's lives are affected. So
Yeah. Yeah. And actually your clients get that same, dopamine hit or that feeling of the folks that they've helped, whether it be an actual like death payout, for a family member and thank goodness that they sold them that policy, or even just some of the financial services products, as wealth gets accumulated for people and being able to be like, man, I had a small place in that because I made that call, because I took the jump, because I took 17 no's, what the hour before I met that person, I was able to step in and be part of their story, especially if it's, like you said, some of these wins,
dude, that is it's so cool on that side of the coin to be able to sit across from, an elderly couple that they're like, well, shit, we don't have enough. We're gonna have to we retired, but now we got to go back to work.
Right.
And you're sitting across from them and you're doing all the homework and you're like, you know what? You could go back to work, or you could look at restructuring some of the things you have and you can pick up some guarantees here through this product and some income extrapolation through that. And you know what? Do you have any plans to like haunt your house when you die? Because if you don't, a reverse mortgage might just be that piece that says, hey, not
Yeah.
only can you afford to retire today and stay retired, but you don't need to go back to work. You have a guarantee you're not going to have to go back to work tomorrow as inflation continues to occur too. These new reverse mortgages are lights out amazing. It's one of the most powerful financial tools out there for this generation coming into retirement. And it's
Yeah.
so cool. Like you talk about dopamine hit. It is when you get to sit across from them and and you smell all the icy hot on their sore knuckles and they're talking to you, their body's hurting. They're talking to you about like, shit, I got to go back to work. And
Yeah.
that look in their eyes when they realize they don't.
Yeah.
You just needed to be a little bit smarter about how they structured this or where they put
That's
that.
right.
And dude, it's one of the most fulfilling things on earth.
Hey, Kings and Queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in both of those scenarios, you had mentioned this earlier, just the power of deep thinking and being able to sit and just, process a situation, whether it be a problem or just even a question. I do this a couple times a week, even just, for my business, for my life. I just sit down and have a question before me and just really let my mind process things. And the subconscious always delivers,
Yeah.
information, especially if you know how to do that. And so I think that's super cool that, you can take your sales game, from not just wanting, to kill something and provide for you, your family. Okay, cool. That's good. That's level one. But then level two is not just even helping them, but like, dramatically like sitting down and like rearranging things to make a deal happen. That's a whole nother skill set. And all the top players have that, and that dopamine hit is just like another, like, that's just part of the game. Like, hey, give me one of those.
Dude, it's so cool too, especially because when you sit and think about it, all of a sudden the butterfly effect comes in and you're like,
Oh
wow,
yeah.
because I was intentional about that and I helped them there, they were
Yep.
able to retire. So they got in the car and they drove across the country to little juniors, soccer game, and they brought him an end of season present, and it was I don't know, I'm dating myself, but it was a Walkman or a Discman and a
Yeah.
couple CDs, and he loved those so much that it just blew his mind and opened his mind to the world of music, and now he's a top selling, pop
Right.
star, and it's
Yeah.
like butterfly effect.
Oh yeah.
That never happened unless you helped grandma and grandpa retire because they couldn't
Yeah.
have afforded the present and they couldn't have been there to give it. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially, I mean, I've done, actually on this show too, of, the butterfly effect of just decisions that we make as specifically as a leader, like if I make a decision today, of course, my business partners, my teams, my wife, my kids, but then like the clients, their families, their kids, the community, the ripple effect is like pretty big as an entrepreneur, and we're making decisions. And of course, when you're trying to help a client specifically, leverage something like that, it makes it even stickier. But that way of thinking, as far as like the butterfly effect or the impact, the multiple layers, that can either be really sobering or it can be really inspiring. And I think both are probably applicable at different times, to be able to give you the juice to keep going, because it's real. It's like, man, this one decision that I made today is like boom, 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 as far as like an effect. And a lot of lives, get impacted by that. Speaking of kind of just impacting lives, and we've kind of danced around a little bit about just impact and stuff like that, but you're married, you've got kids, and you've made adjustments in your life, around like where you guys stay. And we were talking about this before before we hit the record button, but your income's not dependent upon a location. And so a lot of people, over the last 4 or 5 years since COVID have gone, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Where do we actually want to be? And so just talk about, maybe not necessarily like the location per se, but that decision, and how you were able to kind of come to that with your family, and what fruit is that producing on the tree?
yeah, we were living in the city and we wanted kind of a different lifestyle. We wanted to hunt and ride dirt bikes and do all the things. And
Yeah.
it's what we already did. We just wanted to do it a lot more. We wanted to get out of the heat where it's not 120 degrees in the summer.
Right.
And so we literally, we were up here on the 4th of July one year, laying in bed at the hotel, and my wife was just like, "Do you still ever think about moving here?" And I was like, "Yeah, sometimes." And she's like, "Should we do it?" And I was like, "Sure." I'm not even shitting you. The Penske truck rolled out of the house down there and was headed this way on the 28th of that same month. Like
That's
it
amazing.
just, but it's been a huge blessing in a lot of ways. There's been some hard things. The food was way better there. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But a body like this does not maintain itself. It takes some quality feed.
That's right. That's right.
Right. But being here has been a blessing in so many other ways. We spent more time together as a family. We've grown more together. My boys have been afforded opportunities and not just outdoorsy stuff, just
Yeah.
literally everything. Down there, they wouldn't play as much on the sports teams. They wouldn't, just the
Right.
sheer volume of what we can do. And yeah, there's not a, big concert every single night. But you know what? That wasn't what we were looking for anyway. So I feel like we've been
Right.
able to grow closer as a family and do some incredible things, have some awesome experiences. Our boys have started to come into their own, find their own personalities, and
That's cool.
and I don't know. We may not stay here for the next 20 years,
Yeah.
but the last few have just been absolutely incredible. There's been some ups, there's been some downs, but all in all, it's just been one of the coolest experiences of our lives. So
Yeah. Yeah, we live on some acreage here in Kansas City, and so we're in the city, but not really, and our kids get to go outside and learn from the dirt and from the creek and from the pond and from the trees, and all the things that Julie and I had discussed around, like, how do we want our kids to operate and to learn, and how do you truly have autonomy if you're in a school setting, and got to follow the line every single time, and so then therefore we homeschool, and just being able to make decisions where it's just like, oh, you guys do too, cool.
yeah,
But when you have that, like, that filter of like, what do we want, and then why aren't we doing that, and then so you just start rearranging things, not just for the family, but this applies to an insurance business or an entrepreneur who's making decisions in their company. It's like, if this is what I want, why are my actions not lining up with this? And like you said, maybe you don't stay there forever. Okay, fine. I doubt we stay in our house currently not forever, although it's probably going to be the next 5 or 10 years. But what? Why are we here? Is it serving what it is that we want? And so that's probably the decision frame that I'm asking you about. Is not so much has that location helped your family. It sounds like it's been an amazing, especially for your boys. But how has the decision of sitting back and going, what do we want? And then adjusting that for your family, how's that affected you as the entrepreneur? Because you doing all this stuff cool for your family is cool, but like, how's that affecting you as the entrepreneur?
So it's been really incredible. When I first got into this business, I was living in southern Utah, and everything was brick and mortar. I had a whole bunch of people coming in and out of my office. We were knocking doors for insurance, and I had a team of 11, 12 people knocking doors for me,
Wow.
plus customer service reps and sales reps. And we were banging a whole bunch of business, but we were so tied to that location.
Right.
We're utterly dependent on it. And what's been really cool about this is realizing, was moving, from there we went to Vegas, and then from Vegas we came up here. But in this move, it's been like, man, we are not tied to anything. It's been really freeing. It's also helped me. It's been a good compass. Where should I invest? Should I invest more in brick and mortar? No, because my revenue has not decreased in any way, shape, or form. And even if it didn't initially increase, my profitability did, because my overhead expense went through the floor. And so, no, I don't
Right.
need to go drop $1 million on a commercial building to have an office. I don't need marble floors and this and that and the other. 99.9% of my appointments are a phone call or a Zoom call anyways at this point. And
Yep.
the ones that are in person, half the time they're at the client's home. It's like there's just absolutely no need
Right.
for all that. So when we talk about, hey, we might not stay here. We might decide we want to move to Aruba tomorrow. We could,
Yeah.
because of the ongoing investments that I made in my businesses.
Yeah.
Everything's transferable. We would literally get on the plane, land, get over the jet lag, and then just turn on the computer and go back to
Keep
work.
right on going. Yeah.
And like, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting. That and not everybody obviously is in a business that can do that, but I
right.
think people should push the limits. I mean, I started a construction company 3 years ago, and it still today is remote. Now, granted, I mean, we go to people's homes and we remodel them. Okay, cool, but like, there's a lot of things that people used to do in a showroom that we do without a showroom. And it's not that, maybe one day we will, I don't know, but we're doing pretty good. And I like the idea of pushing the limits on freedom and flexibility, especially not just for me as the owner, but for the folks that are coming and going at whatever position that they're holding in the company. And I think that is just it's just a fresh way of thinking. And us as millennials probably just are always going to think like that no matter what. And then of course our kids aren't going to know any different. So it's super interesting when you can push the limits and you go, wait a second, why actually do I need this? Why do I need that? Or why am I doing this? And it's like that old phrase of, the Thanksgiving story, that, they're cooking the ham and they cut the ends of the hams off and they're like, why do we do this? And like, oh, well,
Oh, yeah.
mom's in the kitchen. Let's ask her. Well, grandma always did it. Grandma's in the next room. We ask her. Well, it's the pan that I had back in 1942 was only this big, and so the ham wouldn't fit in it. So I had to cut the ends off. And so all these years later, we still cut the ends of the hams off. It's like, well, why are we doing that?
Dude, so you talk about that. So I actually come from the automotive repair industry before I got into this business, and was born and raised. That's what my old man did. That's what my first couple businesses were shops. And it's the mindset I have now. It's so incredible, because you'll have, as an auto repair shop, if you're one of the lucky ones that figures out how to be successful and expand, you start looking at, okay, well, I have a shop here and I'm in a town of, say, 50,000 people, and I'm going to open up another shop to compete with all the other shops plus this shop, and then try another shop, and you're going to expand into three or four locations in a market that may already be saturated, versus
Yeah.
and not just saturated, but maybe that market is Southern Utah at the time. So Southern Utah is really starting to pop now, but when I was living there, it had a very, very, like, average median income was like $30,000. People were not driving brand new pickup trucks and brand new
Right.
Escalades and stuff. Now there's a lot more about, but back then, dude, it was a lot of old Toyota pickups and Datsuns, right?
Right.
And so it's like, well, Does that person have the ability to pay a $3,000 timing belt bill or something like that? Versus
Right.
again now, and it's the technology, it's the mindset, it's the reality that because of the assets we have today, if we'll use them, if we'll implement and use them, I can manage effectively a business in a location. Like instead of opening up another shop here, I want to live here, so I'll have a shop here. We're doing well, we're profitable, but if I want to open up another shop, why don't I put it in an affluent area where I can sell bigger ticket items and I
Right.
can and I can manage it just as effectively.
Right.
Location
Yep.
doesn't matter. All of a sudden boundaries disappear and your footprint expands
Right.
just through the usage and utility of again a little bit of brain power and intention, and then the technology behind it to back it up. It's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible what you can do. So
Yeah, I had that experience. My first business was an edible arrangements franchise, and I ended up building up 7 locations in 3 states, and then most of that was in my 20s. I still have one of them now, but I've exited most of them. And I remember people when so I had some in Kansas City, and then I remember starting a couple 3 hours south, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, like, what what are you gonna do?" It's like, how are you manage them? It's 3 hours away. And then when I bought one in Florida about the same time, it was like, wait, what? You're in Kansas, you're in Missouri, you're in Florida, like, wait, what? And for me, just like what you just said, it was a brand new way of thinking of going, okay, so I can't get there. I physically can't solve whatever problem it is at the store today. So I have to now solve that problem differently. Who do I call? What reports do I need from the app or from my phone to be able to make decisions? And I can sit right here.
mhm.
Now, granted, there's with retail or with shops or whatever, that there's got to be some physical human there
Right.
at the shop, and so it did cost some resources in that way of having the team build. If I'm not going to be there, somebody's got to be there. But that mindset that you're talking about can be applied in any business, because that's the age that we live in, because things happen super fast and I can manage everything from my phone. I remember this was probably 10, 12 years ago, me managing multiple locations from my phone. And my wife, actually, at that time, this was the kind of the really first time we had to have this discussion, is like, I was on my phone constantly. It's like, yeah, but I'm running 4 businesses. Like, you get it. You think I'm scrolling on Facebook, but I'm running like multi-million dollars every single day that are flowing through these things. And isn't this a blessing that I can be sitting here and in between a couple of these things, talk to you and be with the kids and change diapers, and, oh, by the way, go back to running huge businesses. Like, this is an incredible opportunity to live in the age that we live in. But even more so for folks that are in insurance. I mean, goodness, like, you don't need an office. You don't need any of that, right?
Yeah, you really don't. I like to have an office. I think there's a lot to be said about for me, and there's different personality types. For me,
Sure.
I like just the physical act of getting up, getting ready, going to
Right.
my place of work where I'm going to work. It puts me in a frame of mind.
Yep.
And then it's also easier for me because I am an addict, and man, I
I
will
don't know when to
work.
quit.
Yeah, it's so hard to quit. There's been times I've worked from home. When we first moved here, I didn't have an office. Took a
Yep.
couple months to find a little location. It's nothing fancy, right? But took a couple months. And man, those were hard times because it's like, 10 o'clock at night, and it's like, well, all the work stuff's right there still, so might as well just, play on it.
Right.
And that was kind of a learning lesson. But again, for me, it's so much easier to leave it. I don't have to leave it at the door at home. I can leave it here, right? And
Yeah.
that works for me. Other folks don't need that, and that's okay. But yeah, in insurance and financial services, in like at cash flow, so you could be a real estate investor, you could be a real estate agent. Your 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 business is paper, it's words, it's
Right.
for people in that type of scenario and career. Expanding your footprint is such a pivotal piece. I've got a buddy that runs an agency out of West Virginia, and West Virginia is a great place. Nothing against it at all. He's run into some saturation problems. He's in a very small town of like 5,000 people, and they have 10 insurance agencies.
Yeah.
It's like there's just no way you're going to meet your financial goals
Right.
without expanding your footprint, right?
Yep. That's right.
It's been really hard for him to step out and kind of think in this different way, like, okay, well, like you were saying, I can do everything I'm doing here, there. I might need to solve for it a little bit differently, Like instead of sitting face to face with my clients or kneecap to kneecap, I think that's the weirdest. If my client's knees touch my knees, I'd get the heebie-jeebies, right?
Yeah,
Crusty old kneecaps. But
that's right.
rather than sitting there like that, maybe I need to invest in not just Zoom, but I need to have a professional Zoom account. I
Right.
need to set it up. I need to
Yeah.
maybe spend a couple bucks on some lighting and a decent camera and a decent
Right.
microphone
Yep.
and whatever. Maybe even take a 30-minute course on how to make sure that the camera's not pointed up my nose.
Yeah.
But those small little things, and all of a sudden I can be just as
Yep.
effective as I was before. I just helped a
Yep.
client out of Arkansas in December. We closed a cash value life insurance policy. It's $80,000 a year. To this day, I didn't fly out there and shake his hand. And if I'm ever out that way, you bet your buckets, I'm going to call him up and be like, hey, let's grab some lunch. But
Right.
no, we were just as effective.
Yep.
I helped a gal, she's 67, 68 now. This was a few years ago. Sold her an annuity. This was like the fourth or fifth annuity she'd ever bought. She'd always bought them from her, hometown financial advisor, but someone had said, you should talk to Carson, and that's how we got connected. And we got done, and we always do this little survey. Hey, how was it? What can we do to improve? And then the build on that, because we know how good we're doing. A lot of times they're like, nothing, that was great. It's like, well, if that was great for you, I'm probably going to get along with all your friends as well. Could you do me a favor and introduce me to 2 or 3? Right.
Right.
Easy, simple ask. But
Yep.
no, her feedback was, wow, I've been buying annuities for 20 years. I've had face-to-face financial advisor, and my guy is phenomenal. But that was the best annuity buying experience I've ever had, because we weren't so hell-bent on the kneecap to kneecap mentality that
Right.
it was simple. She didn't have to take time out of her day to drive across town to play 20 questions. It was like, no,
Seriously.
we've decided you want to do this. Let me text you a link, click the link, put in your information. As soon as you're done with that, it's even going to allow you to attach a statement on your previous account to that. It's automatically going to come back. My team and I will prepare the application for you and then send it to you to review and sign.
Yep.
Right. Simple, easy. And she's like, this is just the bee's knees, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No pun
I mean, that's
intended.
it right there. Like that's you creating an environment, for her to basically make it easy, just to be able to say yes. Like, of course, that's what I need. Yep. 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 And then doing it for her. I mean, I think that's the biggest miss, I think, right now, in 2025 is this mindset that we're talking about, is that we're just stuck doing business how we always have. And we're not willing to, whether it's technology or whether it's, new strategies like you're sharing, for insurance agents and financial services folks or entrepreneurs, we're serving the same person, but just different niches. And it's like, if you get into rooms, if you get into Carson's room, you get into Gathering the King's room, like this is how you learn stuff like this, like where you're like, oh, I've never thought about it like that. That's interesting. I wonder if that could work for me. And so if you're listening right now with insurance or financial services, obviously you need to check out Carson's community, but this is like, you learned it from here, us talking. This is how this stuff works. And this is how you leverage new pieces to be able to, to make decisions in your business and change as time changes, is that you get around people who are already doing it. You want to add anything to that real quick?
No, I think that's spot on. At the end of the day, it's exposure, right?
Yep.
And when you join, it doesn't have to be. I would love to have insurance agents and financial advisors in my mastermind, but there's other masterminds out there that are great too, right? So pick one and run with it. Pick somebody that's a step ahead, 10 steps ahead, whatever it is. But then you're going to have to pay for it. What you're paying for is, it's not just, oh, there's some trainings and there's this and that, how the watch is built, right? It's how the watch works. It's sitting in the room, having the exposure, sitting with Chaz, and not just saying, oh, well, I could put on a training, but it's a whole different thing when we're sitting there having a beer and we're actually applying that thing. And the education goes through the roof. So
kind of on this topic here, and last couple questions here around the mastermind principle, but Napoleon Hill, chapter 10, Think and Grow Rich. I talk about this often because it's like try to how I, not just my whole life, but specifically Gathering the Kings. But I feel like it kind of like has tangles in all of the areas of my life. I mean, my relationship with my wife is a mastermind. My relationship with my team and my business partners is a mastermind. Like, how is this applicable to you, to your life, to your marriage, to your group? This concept of 2 or more working in harmony unto achieving something specific. That seems so like, oh, of course I would want that. But how's that working for you? What do you think about this principle? How are you operating in it?
Yeah, So I just want exposure. I want to vet people for core values. I want to vet them for core focus. In other words, let's be the same type of people and value the same type of things and be headed the same direction. But once I know those two things, I want to be around you enough to be comfortable letting all my guard down because that's when I learn the most.
Yeah.
And like you say, that's with my wife. That's with the people in our mastermind. That's with other masterminds I've been a part of and am a part of and other coaches. And I want that because when I let that guard down, all of a sudden the conversations start to shift
That's right.
and they become so much more applicable. Everything becomes more applicable and the blinders start coming off. How the hell were they going to help me when I had my guard up and I'm sitting here? Yeah, and even if I'm not making a liar out of myself, telling them I'm something that I'm not, how the
Yeah.
hell were they going to help me when I just didn't tell them my problem in the first place?
Exactly.
It's
Yep.
when we start talking about the cause and effect of our problems
Yep.
that we start to find the most applicable solutions. But that only happens once you reach this level of comfort. And so I think it's one thing to belong to a mastermind or be in a marriage but it's a whole nother thing to just be comfortable there. Make the damn payment, pay your damn bills and happy wife, happy life so that you don't have to spend that time fighting and stressing. Be in a comfortable situation because that's when the coolest
Yeah.
conversations happen.
Yeah.
And you realize, it may, dude, the biggest pieces I've ever gotten were in those settings and scenarios. Again, whether it's at home or in a mastermind or whatever,
That's right.
but it's outside of the training. The training is great. It's there. It's structured, very tactical. I love it. But
Yep.
the best things I've gotten were in those other moments where somebody
Yeah.
wasn't even trying to teach. They just said something and it was like, I do that too, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
And it's been life changing. I had a call this morning with, I told you, kind of an industry titan, and
Yeah.
it turned into a little mastermind. I mean, dude has been a mentor of mine for like 10 years and he just starts riffing about someone else. We've got 10 years of becoming friends and I don't even pay him to mentor me or coach me anymore, but we're so comfortable at this point. He's riffing about somebody else, and it's like, shit, I'm doing that too. I gotta course correct, but that was,
Yep.
that took 10 years of investing in a relationship,
Yeah.
and at one point that was a fiscal investment, right? And the rest of this time, it's been time and energy and give a damn. But that's where all the magic happens. That's the cool stuff.
It
So
is. It is. I mean, the mastermind, the thing that gets developed when two or more come together, it wouldn't have never existed if we didn't come together, or if you hadn't have had that meeting, or if you weren't vulnerable with your wife and shared about those things that you've been wanting to talk about or whatever. All of those things create then that third element that would have never come. And so that's you're right. It's the magic. We tell people, that the calls are good, the trips are good, all of it's good, but like there's nothing that I'm going to do from stage or a speaker that I'm going to have be brought in that's going to like radically change your life in a way that someone, out in the hallway or, you guys just connecting outside of a regular meeting, you can't get from there either. Right. Like, okay, sure. A speaker come in, maybe I say something, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But living life with someone and like rubbing shoulders and like doing the thing that you were just discussing, how you just heard it and you're like, oh, so it's those
dude,
moments that you're like, okay, I
I
got to make a
had
change. It's time to level
yeah,
up.
I had a religious leader one time. I'm not a very religious person, but I was born and raised in a very religious family, and one of those religious leaders in my childhood and young adolescenthood, adulthood, whatever, was very impactful. Said a lot of things that to this day I quote and I charge people money to tell them that. But one of the things he said is, isn't it interesting how we all pray for help and then we sit alone with our problems?
Yeah.
Whether
It's
whether it's
crazy.
God or the universe or anyone else around, like how's Chaz going to help you unless he knows how to help you?
Right.
And helping you is what's crazy is we all think we know what our problem is, but we don't.
No.
Insurance agents are like, well, I'm not making enough sales. That's not the problem.
Right.
The problem is you're flat out not seeing enough people. How many appointments did you have this week?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Well, why didn't you see more people this week? Well, because I don't have money for leads. Well, you don't need money for leads. There's a neighborhood behind you with 500 doors. Go knock them.
Yep.
Your
But I
problem
wanted to
is,
spend time on TikTok.
yeah, call reluctance. It was so much easier to do that than the pain of the anxiety of going to do the work. People
Yeah.
don't realize that pain, like it keeps them from doing the work, and that pain is more painful than the pain of doing the damn work,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But instead they sit alone with their problem and
Yep.
they never talk to somebody to get those blinders out of the way. And it's like, you're right. It's not that hard to go knock on that door. It's not
Yeah.
that hard to pick up that phone and make that call. It's actually easier. It's much easier than sitting here for the next week wondering where I'm going to get paid from.
Yep. And
Right.
thinking that
But
I've got a sales problem and all you got is just an action problem.
yeah, you're a
Yeah.
phenomenal salesman. You just don't talk to enough people. Nobody closes 100% of everybody. You need
Right.
more volume. But that's, just a microcosmic example. You could apply that to everybody. We all want help and we think we know what the problem is, but the best help comes when it's an answer to a problem we didn't know existed and someone else uncovered that problem. And like I said, we want that help, but we won't let anybody in. What an oxymoron.
Right. Yeah. Carson, man, you've obviously got just years of experience and intelligence around these mindset topics, and you're doing it. You're living the exceptional life, as we say, and you're helping other people do it inside your community and other insurance agents and financial services folks. And how can they find you? How can they find your group? How can they go to the next level if they've been just like, dude, this is incredible. I got to get more Carson. How can they find you?
Yeah, first of all, feel free to reach out to me anytime. You can find me on most social media platforms at cporter389 on every single one of them. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, I'm on there. And then if you're in insurance and financial services, come check out. We've got a free Facebook group. Nobody's going to sell you anything. There's tons of free training. There's hundreds of tools and resources. Nobody's ever going to solicit you ever. You're going to find that when you jump in, you probably want to go to another level with us, but it's absolutely free. It's called Winning at Insurance. Come check it
Easy.
out, hang out, and see what you might pick up.
Yeah, we'll put all that in the show notes too. But Winning at Insurance is the group name. We'll put that in the show notes as well. But Carson, man, I've enjoyed my time with you. Like I said, I enjoyed listening to you from the stage back in the fall, and just looked forward to rubbing shoulders with you. At my stage of this life, or this stage in my life, is like I want to continually get around just incredible people that stretch me, and you've done that here today. I appreciate you stretching my listeners as well. But I hope that you and your family, not only just in the new location, but this just 2025, 2026, 2027 are just some of the best years for you guys. And the family piece is just a big deal for you. So appreciate you being here. Blessings to you and all that you've got your hand on and all the people you're going to be impacting this year, man. Thanks.
Awesome. I appreciate it, dude. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.